This is the pre-calculus regular semester 1 review, problems 14 to 26. All right, so we are actually on problem 14. 13 was in the last video. 14 says solve 1/8 square root of x to the 5th is equal to 4. Well, if you think about this algebraically, we always get rid of these fractions by multiplying the other side by the reciprocal, and the reciprocal of 1/8 is 8/1. So I've got the square root of x to the 5th is equal to 32. You get rid of the square root by squaring both sides. So you're going to get x to the 5th is equal to 1024. And then to get rid of the 5th power, you're going to do one of two things. You can either take the 5th root of both sides. In order to take the 5th root, you have to type into your calculator 5, and then press the math button and use number 5, which is x root. Or your other option for getting rid of a 5th power is to raise the other side to the reciprocal of that power. So you could do 1024 to the 1/5 power, which you might like typing in your calculator a little bit better. Either way you do it, the answer will be 4. Now, are there other ways of doing it? Yeah, you could have done this another way, which is after you multiplied by 8, you could have rewritten this as x to the 5/2 power, and then solved by raising the other side to the 2/5 power, and you still would have gotten 4. Number 15, a car depreciates or loses value at a rate of 20% per year. If the car originally cost $20,000, what is the value of the car after 2 years? We have a formula for depreciation or decreasing value, and that formula is n equals n naught, 1 minus r to the t. N naught's your initial value. R is the rate as a decimal, so 20% is 0.20, and t is the time. And if you plug that into your calculator, you'll get 12,800. So after 2 years, the car will cost $12,800. Number 16, find the balance after 15 years of a $5,000 investment, earning 5.8% interest compounded continuously. We have two money equations, and you have to pay attention to what the compounding is. For compounding continuously, we use the PERT equation. P is the principal or initial investment. E raised to the R is going to be 0.058, and the time is 15. When you plug that in your calculator and you round it to the nearest penny, you should get $11,934.55. Number 17. Find the log base 8 of 512. If you have log base on your calculator, you just press the math button and you use log base and then plug in the numbers. If you don't have log base, because you have an older version of the graphing calculator, then you need to use the base change formula. The base change formula is really easy. You just do the log of 512 over the log of 8. What we did was we changed the base to be base 10 rather than 8. The base of the original problem always goes in the denominator. Well, it turns out that you can change it to log base 10, or you can change it to the natural log, which was the log base e. Either way, you'll find out, not approximately, you'll find out the answer is exactly 3. Number 18. Solve the log base 1/2 of x is equal to -4. In order to do this problem, you're going to have to first rewrite it in exponential form. In exponential form, it's going to be 1/2 raised to the -4th power equals x. And now you can just shove this in your calculator. Raising to the -4th power is the same as raising its reciprocal to the 4th power, and 2 to the 4th power is 16. Number 19. Use a calculator to evaluate the log of 0.014. Normally, when we do these log problems, we would round our numbers to 4 decimal places, although some teachers allow students to round it to 2 decimal places. It is a multiple choice test, so you're going to be able to figure out which one's the right answer by looking at the multiple choice answers. So if you plug this into your calculator, I'm going to round it to 4 decimal places. It's going to be negative 1.8539. Number 20, solve the log base 49 of 343 equals x. But one of the things I want you to notice is that this is already set up for you to do log base if you have it. Or you can do the base change formula. Or you can use this version. Or you can rewrite it in exponential form. It would be 49 to the x power equals 343. The nice thing about this particular problem is the answer is a rational number, and you would get 1.5, or 3/2. You probably wouldn't do it this way, though. 21, use the calculator to evaluate the natural log of 980. You should get 6.8876. 22, solve e to the 2x is equal to 6.8. Now, I gave you a couple different ways of doing this. One way of solving this, if you can't remember how to solve an equation algebraically, one of the ways you can do this is you can put e to the 2x in y1 equals. You could put 6.8 in y2 equals, and find the x-coordinate of the point of intersection of those two graphs. If you want to do this algebraically, you get rid of e by doing its inverse operation, which is the natural logarithm. What the natural logarithm does is it cancels with e, so you're left with 2x is equal to the natural log of 6.8. So x is the natural log of 6.8 divided by 2, and you'll find out that x is approximately 0.9585, which is the same answer you'll get if you graph these two and find the point of intersection. Number 23. Find the amount of time required to double an amount at 6.23% if the interest is compounded continuously. We had a formula for continuous compounding if we want to double our money, and it was t is equal to the natural log of 2 over r. So we do the natural log of 2 over 0.0623, which is going to give me about 11.13 years. However, even if we give you this and you can't remember that's the formula for this particular situation, one of the other things you can do is, since it does say continuously, you can use this equation. Oops, I should make that look better. There we go. And I didn't tell you how much you're investing, so pretend like you invest $1, so when you double it, you'll have $2. What ends up happening is you end up with this equation, which in order to solve, you would take the natural log of the other side, and look, you end up deriving that equation either way. Number 24, find the distance, midpoint, and slope between the points -1, -6, and 5, -3. I always like to call the first order pair x1, y1, and the second one x2, y2, just to kind of help me out when I plug my numbers into my formulas. The distance formula was x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, and you take the square root of that answer. So I'm going to do 5 minus -1 squared plus -3 minus -6 squared. I gotta evaluate what's inside the parentheses first, so I get 6 squared plus 3 squared. Now I can square them, and I get 36 plus 9, which is 45. And the square root of 45, which is the square root of 9 times 5, simplifies into 3 radical 5. The midpoint. The midpoint formula is the average of the x's and the average of the y's. So I'm going to do add the x's, divide by 2, add the y's, divide by 2. I get 4 over 2 and negative 9 over 2, which is going to give me 2 and negative 4.5. So that would be the order pair that is the midpoint of those two. The last thing we're going to do is the slope formula. The slope formula is change in y over change in x. Change in math means subtraction, so it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I got to go back up. So it's going to be negative 3 minus negative 6 in the numerator, and in the denominator it's going to be 5 minus negative 1. So I'm going to get positive 3 over positive 6, which is 1/2, and the slope is 1/2. Number 25, find the center and radius of the circle x minus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared is equal to 16, and then graph it. The general equation for a circle in factored form is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared is equal to r squared, where the center is at h comma k, and r is the radius. So, to find the center, if you can just look at the equation and you can tell me the answer is at 3, negative 2, that's great. But if you're worried about getting the wrong sign on h and k, one of the other recommendations I gave was set each parentheses equal to 0 and solve. So if you set the first parentheses equal to 0 and solve, you find out the first coordinate is 3, and then the second one is negative 2. So here's my center. The radius is going to be the square root of 16, which is 4. To draw the circle, you would go 4 units to the right, 4 units to the left, 4 units above, and 4 units below, and that will give you your best circle. Now, on the final, we're not going to ask you to graph this. However, we may ask you which graph is the graph of that equation. And you need to make sure you know what the correct center is and what the correct radius is. The last problem that I'm doing today is number 26. Write the equation of the ellipse in standard form. I'm going to call it factored form, of 18y squared plus 12x squared minus 144y minus 48x is equal to negative 120. So the way that I made you do this, first you take your x's and you put them together in a set of parentheses that you're going to complete the square on. Create a perfect square trinomial. You put the y's in its own parentheses, and we're going to complete the square on that. But since we're adding 2 new numbers to the left side of the equation, in order to keep it balanced, we're going to add 2 numbers to the right. Now you can't complete the square unless the leading coefficient of the trinomial is 1. So if there's a number in front of the square term, you're going to factor it out. So I'm going to factor out 12, and I'm going to be left with x squared minus 4x plus blank. Remember, you're going to divide both of those terms by 12. The second parentheses, we're going to factor out 18, and I'm going to get y squared minus 8y plus blank. Now we're going to complete the square. You determine the number that goes in the blank by taking the middle term, dividing it by 2, and then squaring it. I'm going to get rid of that. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, 2 squared is 4. The second blank is going to be 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. But those aren't the numbers that go on the other side. Because we factored out a 12 from the original parentheses, we're going to multiply that number back in. 12 times 4 is 48. And then 18 times 16 is 288. Now we're going to write this in factored form. So the first parentheses is going to be x minus 2 squared plus 18y minus 4 squared equals 216. And in order to write it in my factored form, we want the equation to equal 1, so we divide everything by 216. In other words, we reduce those fractions. So 12 over 216 reduces to 1 over 18. 18 over 216 reduces to 1 over 12. And there's my equation in standard form or factored form. And that's the Semester 1 review, problems 14 to 26.